Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. I am excited to be here with you all this morning, and thank you, most importantly, as well, for making us part of your day, wherever in the world you may be, whether it's morning, it may be evening, or you may be well into Sunday. I appreciate all of your support, and as always, from the bottom of my heart, like I always say, thank you, thank you, thank you for making My EdTech Life what it is today. And I am excited for today's episode. As you know, the school year is right around the corner. And let's say that maybe for a lot of us, this last school year was something that was very rough. We've encountered a lot coming from actually going from brick and mortar to virtual and then from virtual back to brick and mortar. And what I love to do is I love to get everybody's different takes and perspectives, everybody from leadership to ed tech integrationists. We've got coaches, but today we definitely have not so average principal here with us today. And that's a play on words for because we have Ashley Markham, who is joining us this morning. And she is an administrator out of Michigan who has a great page on TikTok. And that is how I contacted her because of the work that she's doing. And I love her different take that she has on administration and, of course, teacher support. And that's something that is very crucial and important. So thank you all for joining us this morning. And Ashley, thank you so much for being here on the show. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, yes, I'm really excited. And like I mentioned, getting on TikTok and I guess a late bloomer into the TikTok game because I was like, but then I started seeing just some amazing educators that, prefer that platform over others. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that I did come into this platform
Yes.
because there are wonderful administrators such as yourself, teachers, coaches, education professionals that I love their take on education, their perspectives, and the fact that they feel that they have a voice here. And we definitely want those voices to be heard in our buildings as well. But before we get into that, Ashley, for all our audience members that are joining us this beautiful morning
Mhm.
or evening that may not be familiar with you and your work, can you give us a brief introduction and what your context in education is?
Yeah. I was a special education principal or teacher, sorry, special education teacher for 15 years. I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a teacher. And then from middle school through high school, I was a teacher's assistant in various special education classes. So I knew right away that that's what I wanted to do, to be a special ed teacher. Um, and so I did that. My first year teaching is what drove me into wanting to be an administrator because my first year teaching, I was fired. I was forced to resign. Um, and it really was not all my fault. First year teachers, let's be real, we don't really know what we're doing, and that's okay. That's why you need to have good leadership, good support, good mentor teachers, and I just wasn't afforded that. And so that was disheartening, and I was really made to feel that I should not be a teacher at all. And that's what, to me, what's so sad. And because I did go on to be a very successful special education teacher for 14 more years after that. And so that's kind of getting that forced resignation my first year. That whole story is just insane of everything that happened to me. But that's what, you know, really turned me on into the world of leadership and how I could help or make sure if I ever had that opportunity that that never happened to another educator. I was told that first year that I should not, literally from my admin, that I shouldn't have gone into education. Maybe teaching just isn't for you. And so that was very disheartening, especially after I had spent, $65,000 on, a degree in education. So I just took that and immediately went into that mindset of how can I help other educators? And I did that for 15 years in teaching special education. I always said that my job was to make the lives of a gen ed teacher easier and not more difficult. Because gen ed teachers, special ed, we all have a hard job. And I didn't want the stigma of having my special education students be what some people would consider a burden in the gen ed classroom. I was there to support those teachers. And so it started out, I guess you could say, teacher leadership started from being a special ed teacher, and really supporting my gen ed teachers and helping them. And I always said that I have a tool belt, and I have different tools in my tool belt as a special ed teacher. And I love to be able to use those tools and to show gen ed teachers that, we can all work together and be inclusive for everyone. And so then I started my ed leadership program. And from that point on, I had just really decided that that is what I want to do. I want to be an administrator so I can make a difference in the lives of teachers. And here I am.
There you go. You know what? I love, there's so much that you shared there that I definitely want to go back and unpack a little bit more. And as we continue through your education journey, but what really sticks out obviously is just your experience from that first year, going in enthusiastic, saying, this is what I want to do, pursuing this career that you paid for, that you studied for, and for somebody to just say, you know what, maybe this isn't for you, that could be very difficult and disheartening for sure. But one thing that you also said, and I am a very big proponent of it, and I don't think that districts, or maybe a lot of districts, may not do this well enough. And I'm not saying every district, I'm just saying maybe there are some districts that may not do this well enough, is the induction of new teachers, the mentorship programs, because that was very vital for myself when I came into education, coming in from a business background, not going through a traditional college of education, not knowing theory, practices, pedagogy. It's just like, hey, you've got enough credits to be a math teacher, so we're going to put you in a math classroom.
Sure.
But that was important, that I had two mentors, and they weren't even the mentors that were assigned to me. There were mentors that just felt just that urge, like you said, like, hey, I want to help a new teacher, especially somebody that's coming in from the outside. And that contributed so much to my passion for education more than anything, that they inspired me, but also the fact that the longevity in always remembering how they made me feel, and the way that I want to help other teachers as well, just like the heart that I'm hearing that you have to help other teachers be successful. So I want to go back to that moment, like that first year coming in, no mentor. So what was maybe some of your biggest, I guess, surprises from, transitioning from, the College of Education, graduating, and now into the classroom? What were some of the things that, whoa, I didn't expect this, but, let's see how we can figure this out?
Sure. So I guess I didn't know anything really. I didn't think my once I got into that first year, like, my college prep program did not teach me how to be a teacher, let alone a special education teacher. Like, I didn't know how to write IEPs. I didn't know how to do manifestation meetings. I did the best that I could. There were a few special ed teachers that were supposed to be my mentor, but they were on their way out. Like, I don't necessarily fault them. They were retiring the following year, so they were just ready to get out of there. But I think the thing that surprised me the most is the politics in education. And I don't necessarily mean like the political climate that we're in currently. I mean, just like the things that you don't know happen in the world of education until you're in the mix, until you're in it, and how teachers are treated, and how we are expected to do way more than what we're paid to do. And that sort of thing, just like those nitty gritty things that you aren't taught in your college ed prep program. And so that was like a huge, like, eye-opening experience for me. I never thought as a naive teacher that I would have an administrator that would be so poor. And how can you be so bad and be so successful in your career? You know, you are a principal of a giant middle school and you are supposed to be so successful, from the outside looking in, but every single teacher in that building knew that that administrator was not good.
Mm.
And so, me coming in as someone who is vocal and loud, can be obnoxious, and expresses their opinion, I didn't realize that that was um, not necessarily what was okay to do in that situation and in that setting. So, I think that was what a lot of what was very eye opening. I learned to have very broad shoulders that school year, and to advocate for myself and advocate for my students.
There you go. And I think that's so important too. Number one, I always say for teachers, always, you set your boundaries, know what it is that you need to do within your job scope. And because obviously we want longevity, we want mental health. We don't want you to get sick. We don't want you to burn out. And if you're happy where you're at, you're always going to come in happy. The students feed off of that. They're going to want to come into your classroom, and it's great. And I understand what you're saying, where from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, wow, like this person is amazing. Look at what they're doing. But the culture inside is
Mhm.
very, very different. And that's what a lot of people may not see and the community may not realize. Another thing that I would love to ask about, and then we'll come back now, a little bit more about this, but
Sure.
what really stuck out is how you advocate for special education.
Yeah.
I have had the experiences where there are a lot of teachers in classrooms that'll be, oh, well, that's not my student. That's
Mhm.
special ed. Like they take care of it. And so, but you're the general ed teacher. You're tier one. No, they're not mine. They're gonna come pick them up and they're gonna do their own thing. And I always was so disheartening and so
Mhm.
heartbreaking, because there are a lot of teachers out there that do not want to support students because they may have an IEP or a 504, and they signed off on this legal document, but they're like, nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm still going to give you the four answer choices, but instead of like giving you that F, I'll just give you like the passing grade and whatever.
Mhm.
And that to me is so disheartening and heartbreaking, and I just feel for that child, because I- to myself, I learned when I moved to the elementary, from high school to elementary, I kind of learned how to change my language rather than saying, oh, that's my kid, that's my kid. No, it's these are our kids. And when I started changing my language, to that really just made a huge difference into what it is that we are doing. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit more about your experience with that and special ed and advocating
Sure.
for those students.
Yeah. So I always use the phrase shared custody. We co parent these students together. We have shared custody and we have to do what's best for the student, not what's best for ourselves. But what's best for the student. And what's best for the student is to have a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher who are on the same team and can collaborate professionally and successfully. And so I always prided myself in being able to build those relationships first. Just like administrators want teachers to build relationships with students, teachers need to be able to build relationships with other teachers. Was that always easy? Absolutely not. Did I always get along with every single teacher that I had to work with? No. And when I became an administrator, I actually went through my years of service and tallied how many gen ed teachers I worked with in my 15-year career, and it was over 150. So, over 150 gen ed teachers that I had to build relationships with, that I had to find a way to connect with them to help them connect with my students. And it wasn't, like I said before, it's not always easy, but if I always felt that if I was able to make those connections with teachers, then they would more easily be able to connect with my students or our students. Um, Sometimes I would have teachers who, generally did not like me because I would tell them straight up, like, this is this is a legal document and you have to follow this. But I always followed that with, how can I help support you? Not just support the student. How can I help support you as the gen ed teacher? What do you need from me to help you help our student? And I think that is what made me a successful special education teacher, is that my gen ed teachers knew I was in their corner, I was on their side, that they weren't just their student, they weren't just my student, they were our student, and I was always going to be there to support them supporting the student. And I think that's huge.
Yes, no, I agree with you 100%. That is huge. And I've seen it on the flip side too, where it's more like, okay, yeah, you're here to help. Okay, go make these copies and go make these tests and do all this other stuff. And pretty much just like, okay, you're going to go teach them the same
Mhm.
thing, or even though I may be the teacher of record, you're the one that's going to be doing all the instruction for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, and yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, it is a problem and it does take a toll, but I
Mhm.
mean, we could definitely do better. But
Yeah.
let's move now forward to now all of a sudden it's like, all right, Ashley is principal now, that drive to go into admin, because I can tell just, the way that you're speaking, you really have that heart to support, to help, and to better the
Mhm.
environment and culture around. And I've seen a lot of your content that you create. And I love especially the most recent uh, content that you've been creating going into these principal groups, and it's like, wow, like it's very
Mhm.
shocking,
Yeah.
for a lot.
It is. It
It is.
really is.
So all right, so I just want to know, where did that story start? I know it was like, okay, I know this person or this experience did not go well, but that's
Mhm.
what drove you to be a principal.
Yeah.
So tell us about that process and how you started, and I guess maybe your perspective and your practice, where does that come from?
Sure. So, after that first year teaching, I was even hindered from getting other jobs by those two administrators. They would call around, and it was just horrible. It was like the worst experience of my life. But I was thankful. I'm so grateful to have gotten a position in a charter school in Flint, Michigan, and that charter had a special ed teacher named Lola. Lola came into the profession later in life. So she was more like my mom's age than my age. But Lola was the one that helped mold and shape me into the teacher that I am today. And I had that mentor connection with her. We're still amazing friends. Even with the age gap, like I love Lola and I appreciate her, and I attest a lot of my teaching ability, and even in leadership, to Lola, for helping me. And so I started my degree in ed leadership with Lola at that charter school. And so I took the time between starting that ed leadership program to becoming a principal was 10 years. The One of the main reasons why I had to start so early was because I couldn't afford my student loans. So what do you do when you can't afford those loans? You just go get more and you get another degree. So I did that, and but I took 10 years to work on my leadership skills. And I was able to get various leadership, teacher leader positions in the different districts that I worked at. My most recent and previous district, I was the head teacher, which basically was an assistant principal without the title or the pay increase. But I did it because I knew that I was on a track and I wanted to have those experiences. So I was able to do discipline and to help my principal as basically an assistant principal. And that principal She gave me a lot of opportunities. I did whatever leadership things I could do for her. I created our master schedule. I created our testing schedules. I was chair or head of the school improvement plan. I did district improvement. I did everything that I could possibly do to give me experiences. And so that really helped give me a broad experience. And so I had a lot to bring to the table when I actually became an administrator. And in those 10 years, I did many interviews, but I'm grateful that it took me 10 years to get that first admin job, because I have all of those experiences to pull from, working with so many different educators. And I'm glad that was my journey. And now I can use those experiences and help other teachers.
And that's one thing that I love, and that's one of the reasons too that I love your content, is because just hearing your experience, it really allows you to learn so much from so many different people, so many different perspectives. And even as us, continually learning and not stopping and being stagnant and just sticking in our box, but really thinking outside the box, and even sometimes going against the grain, which can be very difficult
Yep.
because we're always looking not only just for ourselves, but I mean, you're looking for just teachers that are getting overwhelmed, and they're getting, so many burdens are put up on them, state testing, other mandates, federal mandates, state mandates, and all that stuff that is happening. And it's so difficult for a lot of them that it's important to have leadership that is, in the trenches with them, not just, at their desks the whole time and not being visible and just kind of staying in their safe space, but to really go out there and check the
Mhm.
climate and see what's happening, that the decisions that are being made in that office, go follow a student around all day and see how those decisions affect your teachers and that student all day, and
Sure.
see, could we do something better, or how can we improve this, or what, this is working. So I love that you bring a lot of that to the table. And so now, kind of transitioning into that, into this role,
Yeah.
and in your experience now, in the past, I guess we'll say the past 3 years, going from brick and mortar to virtual, and now from virtual to back to brick and mortar,
Sure.
for yourself, what have you included in your practice to help that climate and that culture in your school, to help support your teachers? What have been maybe the top 3 things that you've done to help support?
Yeah, and I think, okay, so I would say getting to know my staff 100% is the best thing that any administrator can do. Getting to know them on a personal level, understanding how they work, the ins and outs of their brains, just figuring their personalities out. I think that was one of the best things I could have done to make my me successful and my building successful. Um, so that's like the number one. I want to know who you are, what your experience is, where you're coming from, who your spouses are, what do your children do, are they in school, out of school, are you a grandparent? I want to know all of that, because that can better help me help you, if I know a little bit about your life experiences. So getting to know my staff, huge. Number one, that's what I do. And then number two is showing appreciation every single day in any way that I possibly can. And I didn't realize until I started TikTok and getting so many comments on my videos of negative things that have happened to teachers. Like, I've had my negative experiences, my friends, teacher friends have had their negative experiences, but I guess I didn't realize how wide that spectrum is in the world of education until TikTok. Um, and so I think that my number two is showing that appreciation, because teachers so often do not get that. I say 3 words every single day to whoever I can, whether that's in an email or face to face. I appreciate you. If I ask my staff to do something, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing that. If I don't know, if a staff helps out with a discipline thing, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And those 3 words go so far. It's so simple, it's so easy, and they go so far. And I think that so many times teachers have such poor leadership in their lives that they hang on to every word that you speak over them. And so just having that positive affirmation that there is someone on your side in your corner that does appreciate you can go so far in building a positive climate and culture in your building.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah, I was gonna say, I think those 2 things, it's making those connections before anything else are definitely something that is very important, and, with high schools, with so many, teachers and so on, it could be very difficult to do those things, but I wanna ask you, how do you do that at the beginning of the year or throughout the year to get to know your staff? Is there something that you do or use, maybe just to help, provide some help for some principals on how to do that? All right, I think we might have frozen, or I think it might be me. Let's see what's happening here. Let me go ahead and refresh, guys. So I know we're live. Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
All
Sorry
right,
about
sorry
that.
about that. No, it's all good. So Ashley, it's
Okay.
okay. Like, hey, tech happens. So my question was, going back to those first 2 things that you said, I think they're very important. That connection, knowing that
Mhm.
positive affirmation, building up. What are some ways, just before we go on to the
Sure.
next step, for a principal or maybe somebody new to this chair? What is a way that you would do or that you would suggest for them to be able to find out a little bit more
Sure.
about them, the way they work?
Yeah. So the first thing that I did was send out a survey to all my staff. I created a Google survey and I sent that out to all my staff in the summertime. And it had all sorts of questions like what's your favorite drinks? What's your favorite candy? Tell me about your life. What do you want to share with me? And then after I read that, then I made half-hour meetings with every single teacher before school started, and I met with them one-on-one, and I would go to their classrooms in their comfortable space, and I would communicate with them in their classrooms and just have a conversation about who they are, what they teach, what do they need from me, how can I best support them, and tell me about your summer. Just an informal 30-minute conversation with every single teacher to get to know them.
Excellent.
That was super easy. The next thing that I did, and this is so so simple, I wrote handwritten birthday cards. Handwritten birthday cards, and it may seem juvenile, but I had so many teachers tell me, I've never had a birthday card from my administrator, or my birthday's never been acknowledged. That's important. So those are just easy things that I could do to get to know my staff and to show them that I do appreciate them.
There you go. That's
Mhm.
great. Just something simple. Now
Super simple.
we do have a question here from Sherry. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us. She's been great. She's been on a lot of our shows and commenting. But Sherry has a question. She says, "Do you make similar connections to families?" So maybe let's talk a little bit about that. How do you reach out to families? And before you start with that, it's for myself too. That's something that's very important. That
Mhm.
when we hear the term learning community, oftentimes we think of just the people within our 4 walls and within our district buildings. But to myself, learning community means parents as well, where parents can come in and feel comfortable and feel welcome. So,
Yes.
what are some ways that you connect with parents as well?
Sure. So when I first got this admin position, my very first admin job, I called every single family. Every family. I spent all summer and I called every family to introduce myself. And some parents were like, "Hi." Like they didn't really know how to react to the principal calling them in the summer. I don't know.
Were they
Yeah,
like, wait a minute, school
it's
hasn't
just
even
like
started and my kid's in
right,
trouble already?
right, just like a long pause, like, okay. And I'm just like, I'm just calling to introduce myself. I'm your new administrator. I'm your new principal. If there's anything I can do to help, I would love to be there for you and your family. So, another thing that helps me get to know my families on a more personal level is that I do work in a small district. So it is already more personable. But having that initial phone call with all of the families, I think was very helpful. And some parents shared a lot about their kid. And some parents were just like, okay, it's nice to know who you are. And I'll see you at open house. So, but that said, I feel like that set me up for success. The other thing that I love to do is go to all of as much as I can the extracurriculars. I support the band, I support athletics, I support our drama club, and wherever I can be present, whenever it is, it fits into. I'm also a mom and a wife. When it fits into my schedule, I do that as much as I possibly can. And I think it's important for the kids to know that I support them and for the families to know that I'm supporting their kid, even after school hours. So, also, I really enjoy having those parent meetings, even when parents are frustrated or upset, or, hitting that head on, and not being afraid of those. Uncomfortable conversations, I think, is huge, because parents know that, yep, sure, maybe your kid did something really dumb, maybe they got caught vaping in the bathroom, whatever it might be. It's not just that I'm here to penalize your child. I am here to help support you, to help support them. And so what can we do together to help your child be successful? And I think that's so important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And see, a lot of those things I know seem like maybe for some administrators may say, oh yeah, that doesn't work or anything like that. But I mean, it goes a long way. Just something so simple. And I know that at least in the schools that I worked at, that little level that I knew that at least once a month or every now and then I'm gonna get a little surprise. And we get that little break where I had an amazing principal that would come in and all of a sudden surprises coming down with a cart full of ice cream like in the middle of the day, like she's like, hey, everybody's getting ice cream. And man, I was just, that culture there was
Yeah.
just amazing. People were happy, students were happy, everybody was working together as a team. And then of course sometimes it's like, hey, I kind of, can I leave early, or I've got this. And sure, don't worry, we'll get you covered, I'll cover your class. So those principals that are very just active and understanding that life happens and they're trying to balance things out as well. And they've got, yes, tons of paperwork, they've got the phone calls, but they say, you know what, I want to take care of my people because they're they're the ones that run the school. They're the ones that, take care of the students and things of that sort. And that kind of leadership really is something that I loved and and admire. So when principals go that little extra mile is great. And then you've got the other side where sometimes it's just like not visible. They're just, attached.
Mhm.
The desk is attached to their chest right here, and that's all they do. And I know that there's a lot of stuff that they need to take care of, but like you said, visibility is important. Having
Mhm.
the community know you, and you're building those connections and those bonds. And so, yeah, I admire you for that. That's
Thank
wonderful because you have to find that balance for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. At one point in my school year, I had a lot of issues with vaping in the bathroom, and this was before we got our vape detectors and that sort of thing. So I took a table and I sat it in the middle of the hallway, right where two hallways intersected, right at that T, and I did all of my work in the hallway. And for weeks, I did that. Whenever I possibly could be in the hallway, unless I was having a meeting and needed to be behind closed doors, my desk was stationed in the hallway, and the kids knew I was there. The teachers knew I was there, and I was just a presence. And it was really eye opening to see which kids were out in the hallway all the time, which kids were using bathroom passes for every single hour. All the time, and then that sort of thing. So I do think like presence is key. I want to be where the students are, and I think that should be the mentality of every administrator
You
as
know,
much as you possibly can.
I love that you said that because I've had a guest on our show and he's a podcaster too. Him and his name is Mike Earnshaw, and he is a podcaster, Punk Rock Classroom. So make sure you check him out with Josh Buckley. They're administrators, but Mike Earnshaw is always constantly posting, on social media. He's got his little cart that he
Mhm.
rolls around and he's got his laptop there, but he'll roll into classrooms. He'll be on the halls and he even has a little speaker hooked up to it that he rolls with him So he's just, present. He's bringing joy, happiness in the
Yeah.
car line and meeting and greeting kids and, building that relationship. And the
Mhm.
more that you're visible, the more familiar you are, it just becomes like a family. And really that's what it should be, your extended family at home. And so I love that you said that visibility is definitely important. Now, Ashley, we have a comment here. It's from LinkedIn. So maybe just to see your approach, what you may think about
Sure.
this. I kind of read it real quick. And Liliana, thank you so much for posting this all the way from Colombia. So thank you,
Mhm.
Liliana, for joining us. So this is what she states, and let me put it on here because it is rather long. It says, I have a teacher friend who recently got a leadership position. On the day he was introduced, a member of the board made a comment in public about how he had to improve his public speaking skills, which led us with the idea that admin have their doubts about his abilities. So, what piece of advice would be meaningful to teachers who become leaders despite the doubt of others?
Sure, sure. So, I guess the best thing that I could say to that is to know your own abilities and to be confident in that. Not everyone has to like. I'm not your average. I am not an average leader. I don't have all the fancy words to say to you. I am not like, do I have a lot of education? Yes, I have. My husband says I have more degrees than Fahrenheit as far as my education. But I am just a normal person. And I like to communicate how parents and students will understand. So I'm not up here way super high in the sky in the clouds with how my communication is, but I am confident in what I do and how I lead and how I present myself. So I guess I would just say that just be confident in yourself and know your abilities and have confidence in that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you, Amanda, also joining us. Amanda is a great fan of the show, supporter. Thank you, Amanda. It says here, being connected to one another during the workday helps build climate and
Mhm.
culture authentically. I absolutely
Yes.
agree with that.
100%.
Excellent. All
Mhm.
right. So, Ashley, let's go ahead and kind of, as we're kind of winding down a little bit
Mm,
more, like I said, I got onto TikTok. I'm a late bloomer in the game, but
yeah.
so many wonderful educators and stumbling upon your content really helps me because I'm one of those that I aspire to
Mhm.
have leadership role one day, and also really a lot of the things that you say are things that I myself have said many times, but oftentimes dismissed because it's like, nah, that'll never work, or do this. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, we've never really tried it, things of that sort. However, tell us a little bit about how you got into the TikTok game, and then of course the work that you're doing there, because
Sure.
it is a positive channel. It's not like a lot of channels that are out there that are like, oh, you need to quit, you need to do this and do that. And because I love the genuine advice that you share because it's through your experience. So tell us a little bit of how you got started with that, or why you got started with that.
Yeah. So I was on TikTok probably for like 6 months before I ever even made a video. And it was so eye opening to see all of these educators doing their thing, like being them and doing their thing on TikTok. I loved it. And then I thought, I can do my thing. And I didn't see a lot of administrators on there. And even now, if someone does comment that they are an admin, they don't have videos. There's not a lot of content that they are creating, which is totally fine. Not everyone is comfortable with that sort of thing. And so I thought, well, I have a lot to say, and I just need an outlet. And so that's kind of how my TikTok came to be, was just having a place where I could express myself and perhaps help other people. Um, like I said, several times, I support teachers. And so I want to be an example to other administrators on how they can support their teachers. Um, and I try to keep it as positive as possible and uplifting as possible because, you know, education is negative a lot. Unfortunately, we are so politicized, and the climate and culture of our country currently. In oftentimes, teachers are always the scapegoat. we are the scapegoat. Educators can be the scapegoat for whatever is going on in our country. And that's so frustrating. It's always, well, we're not testing enough, or we're not doing enough, and you're not working hard enough, and you will get the summers off, and that sort of thing. And so my TikTok is just to kind of shine a light on the good things that are happening, how administrators can be helpful and supportive, and how administrators can create a positive climate and culture. And also on the flip side, to show teachers that there are good admin out there. We are out there. You just sometimes need to find us. We
Yes.
are there, and we are here to support you and to love you and to nurture you and to help you be the best teacher that you can be for our kids. And so that's kind of how my TikTok came to be.
Yeah. And see, and that's what I love about it, that in yes, we see all the teachers doing their own thing, and then of course you get that other side of TikTok where it's like, oh, this is why I
Yeah.
quit my job and now I'm doing this. And but a lot of the root of that I've seen in some of those channels or some of those videos is that it, it was at one time that they got hurt
Mhm.
by admin, or
Yep.
they got hurt by people that are in those director spots and things of that sort. And
Or it's the
man,
lack of support.
yeah, or the lack of support. And so I'm just like, wow, this is terrible. But then we see a channel like yours, and I absolutely agree. Like it really kind of gets me thinking, oftentimes gets me reflecting, but in a positive way of saying, you know what, if I was in this kind of role or in a leadership role, I would absolutely love that tip, or I would absolutely love to try that. Because you want to, I'm all about culture, I'm all about connections, I'm all about,
Mhm.
like you said, knowing who I am working with and to help them out, and know them at that personal level where I know the way they work and how we can gel
Yeah.
together. And that's something that's very important. So thank you so much for sharing that and bringing so much positivity, and of course your own personal experience through that. And I
Mhm.
appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story and your experiences. So I mean, it's just been a delightful, wonderful, my cup, my heart is full right now, and I my cup of coffee is empty, but my heart is full. So I just absolutely loved it. So Ashley, thank you
Mhm.
so much. But
Yeah.
before
Sure.
we go, here's my one of my favorite segments, and a lot of people
Yeah.
their favorite segments is these last three questions that I always love to ask my guests. So Ashley, question number one before we wrap up is, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Sure. So I would have to say the way teachers are treated, and the way that oftentimes educators are vilified in our country, um, and couple that with poor administration. So we have the vilification of teachers, always not doing enough and that sort of thing. And then couple that with teachers having poor administrators or unsupportive administrators. I think that's what gets my heart. That's what that's what pushes me to do more and to educate administrators. But that also just it gets me, and I hate that teachers have to go through some of the things that they've had to go through. It's not right and it's not fair. But that's why I'm here. That's why I have my TikTok, to hopefully shine a light on the good.
Excellent. Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Ashley.
Yeah.
Question number two is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Sure. I thought really hard about this. I even Googled it. um, if I could have anything on a billboard, it would be every face of every child or educator that has lost their life to gun violence in schools. It would be their faces, and it would be all over this country, everywhere you turned. I want to see their faces. I want everyone to remember um, them,
Excellent.
especially those educators.
Excellent. Thank you so
Hmm.
much for sharing
Yes.
that. Such a good answer.
Yeah.
All right, last question. And we kind of talked a little bit about it in the very beginning. So let's say that this was not your average podcast and you are the host and I am your guest. What would be one question you'd like to ask me?
Sure. Just going along with how can I support you? I guess that would be my question. How can I support you? What can I do? What can I do support you and um in your mission, your goal, and what you're doing?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. No, but
You're
that
welcome.
is that. Wow, that kind of like where did that go from? That's awesome. No,
Yep.
really, honestly, it's just really by just visiting our website, sharing our content because it seems like our mission, our paths are very similar. Our end goal is really, of course, for myself, is student success, but also building that culture, those connections, and building that PLF, that personal learning family.
Mhm.
So for you and I to just be here on this podcast is already amplifying that mission, which is to connect educators from the K through 12 space, higher ed, education professionals, and even content creators. That now we're seeing teachers being content creators as well,
Mhm.
bringing them together and just really blowing this up. The positive side of education, how we can change education, our ideas, and mainly is sometimes people have different ideas, but where is that intersecting segment that where we can all meet eye to eye and to continue to push the education needle forward. So really the support is just that keep doing what you're doing,
Thank
and
you.
that maybe we can collaborate later on
Yeah, I
something
would love
else,
to.
and just continue to have these talks and share with people that not everything that you see on the news or anything that you see in the politics and everything is all true, that we there are genuine, authentic, wholehearted individuals such as
Mhm.
ourselves that have a passion for education and what we do, and we want just what is best for our students and our teachers to continue to move this country forward. And for myself, my mission is always to prepare the students for the future of work, the
Mhm.
future of learning, and building those 31st century skills. I don't even say 21st anymore
Right?
because we're well into that. I was like, hey,
There we
we got
are.
to get ready for 31st century.
Sure.
So yeah, that's really that support and just
Awesome.
doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for that
Yeah.
question. It's wonderful. And here's maybe another one that I thought of that I'm going to put you on the spot is,
Okay.
who would you recommend also to be a guest on this podcast?
Oh, I I mean, I looked through your TikTok and your videos and saw who you had. Um, I think Mrs. Chang. I think she's awesome. Have you seen her
I
on
have
TikTok?
not.
Oh, you got to find her on TikTok. She has like
Okay.
1 million followers.
Okay.
Um,
You got to send me that DM with her.
I will.
And it's out in the air now. So I'm going to make sure I
Hey,
cut this piece and we'll
yep,
tag, and then that way we can make sure we
yeah,
get them on the
she's
show.
awesome. Mhm.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. It has been an honor. It's been a pleasure. And just meeting like minded educators
Yeah.
that are really trying to make things better for the education landscape. And I thank you for that. You continue doing what you're doing because we definitely need more leaders such as yourself. And the fact that you, as a leader, are not only creating followers, but that you yourself, through your practice, are also creating leaders. And hopefully we'll have other admin also that will definitely be learning from you as well. And to all our audience members, as always, thank you so much for all of your support. I want to thank Amanda, Liliana, Sherry, and everybody who joined us live today with your comments. I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart. Also, please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can go ahead and check out this episode and all our previous episodes and guests. So you can go ahead and enjoy that for your listening pleasure and get some gems from what they share, because these are passionate individuals that you can take just one of those little gems and sprinkle it onto your practice and just create some magic. Also, you can go ahead and stop by our store where we've got some new merch. We've got some new hats here. All right. And you can go ahead and purchase that. Here you go. Connect, learn, and inspire. All right. So make sure you check that out so you can continue to support our mission to bring you the best of the best shows, to continue to amplify educator voices, creator voices, and just to continue to push the education needle forward. Make sure you subscribe to our channels, follow us on all socials at myedtech.life, or actually at myedtech live. Sorry about that. And as always, from the bottom of my heart, Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. Make sure you follow Ashley. All her socials will be on this episode show notes as well. So until next time, my friends, don't forget, as always, stay techie.